Okay, I think we're ready to go. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this, what I hope to be is going to be an excellent webinar. My name is Thomas. I am the Western Regional Sales Manager for HIMS, and I've got a few people here with me. I've got Eureka. Eureka, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Eureka Vu. I'm the Assistive Technology Coordinator at California School for the Blind.
Great. Of course, we've got myself. We also have with us Caitlin Cunningham. Caitlin, you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, I'm Caitlin Cunningham. I'm the co-founder and COO of Mathpix, and I'll tell you more about Mathpix later.
Great. And we also have John Taylor. John?
Hi, I'm John Taylor. I'm this product specialist for Sterling Adaptives. Sterling Adaptives is the Northern California distributor for several different large brands of assistive technology.
Great. Thank you, John. All right. So let's go ahead and just dive right into it. Actually, before we do, I want to do a little housekeeping real quick. So if you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A section, and we'll collect the questions at the end and go through them. You can also choose to raise your hand. If it's a relatively simple question or if it's asking for clarification on something, we'll try to answer it as we're going. But there are over 200 of you guys attending this webinar so far, and that number seems to keep going up. So we'll try to get to the questions as they come, but just be prepared if you have a question, we'll try to answer it there at the end. So John?
Yeah, excellent. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit briefly about what our learning objectives are. So what we've done is basically researched a few different ways that we hope are the most efficient and the easiest, and we tried to cover as many of the different possible scenarios, or at least the most common scenarios you might be facing with your students during this remote learning session. So the idea here is hopefully these will be good working solutions for you that will work within your environment that you currently are using, meaning if you have a Braille note taker or you're at home with a computer and a Braille display. And anyway, we're trying to find some good solutions for those, and hopefully they are good, easy solutions that will help you provide particularly math for your students, especially during this time of remote learning for a lot of folks. Back to you, Thomas.
Okay, so as John already shared, math is quite difficult already, like trying to teach live in person with our student, and we're finding it even more difficult with our remote learning situation. And so I just wanted to go over some of the poll questions that came in that we asked. So the first question is, are you currently offering math to your students? And surprisingly, well, this is a surprise to me, 63% of you guys are saying that you do currently. And we would be actually really interested in how you're delivering content and maybe some of your pain points. And hopefully we're addressing some of that in the webinar as well. We have 20% saying yes, but limited, and then 17% saying no. So the reason why we decided to tackle such a huge challenging topic is because we definitely believe that math is very important, and since school is still in session, what could happen is that a lot of our Braille students, our blind, low vision students, might end up falling behind. And honestly, a lot of the TVIs that I've talked to, as well as a lot of teachers at our school, is they're just not doing math at all. And really it's not okay, because every student should have access to their entire curriculum. And so we're hoping that we can provide you some solutions in this webinar. And just want to reassure everyone that you're not alone if you are not delivering math, and hopefully, with a little bit of either training and some of the things that we are going to discuss, that you'll be able to deliver some sort of math. So some considerations when thinking about math, right? So what tools are available? What software is available? What technology does the student have on their end? What software does the teacher and student have access to? And this we find also challenging because a lot of our software is on our desktop computers at school, and we might not necessarily have it on our laptop computers, as well as different kinds of equipment, right? Embossers are in our office at school, and we might not have access to those. So these are some things that we have to consider, as well as what do teachers and students need in the future to make distance learning possible. And I want to, because I'm a technology specialist, want to just emphasize this is not only the case with math, but in technology in general, right? And I'm actually really grateful that the last couple years with the SBAC testing, it's really forced the transition into technology. And it was kind of a pain in the side, but I think after a couple years, teachers are really starting to get a hang of it. I'm seeing a lot more Braille displays and just overall technology being used, and I find that really encouraging. So moving forward, what kind of tech skills do our students and teachers need? And then really the need to plan ahead, because we don't know with our current given situation how much longer this shelter in place will last, and or if we are looking into distance learning into the fall. And just want to mention, there's no, magic method. So if you're hoping for the magic pill, sorry, we don't have it. But we are going to try our best to attempt it from all different angles with different software, as well as on the student end, what they are using. So we kind of put our heads together and was like, what is the perfect equation? Meaning, what criteria makes it possible for the best case math scenario for our students, right? So the first thing is accessible. And I want to say accessible is not equivalent to easily access, like user experience side. So an example I use is, for example, like a web page may be accessible, and yet the student or user has to tab 20 times before they get to the area that they want. That would be considered accessible, but it's not user friendly. So accessible in our terms is easily used and accessed. It's a requirement for Braille students for consuming information. It means accessible for the teacher regarding easy transcription, and also easily accessible for the student. The second one is digital. So digital content is a lot more flexible and can be easily converted to different formats depending on what the student is using. The reverse is more difficult. So example of digital content is, I remember back in, and I'm sure some of you teachers also have some mainstream teachers that are like this. They've been teaching for like 50 years and they have printed worksheets. And they don't have it. You're like, hey, can you send this to me in digital copy? And they're like, sorry, I don't have it. So, and then for the TVI, then we have to go and, either OCR and make it into a digital format. So when content is provided in a digital way, then we can easily transcribe it and make it accessible to, based on what device the user is using or what format they need. And the last is edible. Yes, you can eat it. Just kidding. Editable. So information that can be changed or modified allows the student to spend time solving the problem instead of having to retype the problem or having to retype the paragraph or the equation. Next slide. So where to start? The first place I think that is important to start is really with the student in mind, right? What is the student currently using? What are their available tools? So accessible math can only be used by the student if the student has access to the tools, so it has tools to access the information. So for example, if you email a student a BRF file, but the student doesn't have a device that can read BRF, this is not accessible to the student. And there's two considerations here. It's both hardware as well as software. The second consideration is student skill. So the student must have the skills to obtain and access the information. An example here is sending a document through Google Drive when the student has no experience using Drive. It's not really realistic and it's difficult. And even given our current situation, if it's not a skill that the student was already working on, trying to teach Google Drive with a screen reader remotely has posed some challenges. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's a lot easier, you know, in person. So what are their current skills that they already have, and to enhance those skills? The third thing is teachers available resource tools and skills. So teachers must have the ability to create files in the format that the student can use. This includes having the right tools and skills, and basically that is why we are here today. Next slide. Okay, so we kind of came up with at least in California, the most commonly used technology combinations. The first is a laptop, screen reader, and Microsoft Office. And just as a reminder, anytime that your student is using a screen reader and a laptop, they should also be using a Braille display. The second one, and this is in no particular order, laptop, screen reader, and Google Apps instead of Microsoft Office. Chromebooks, I know that is very prevalent in the field, or the student might have a Braille Note Touch or a Touch Plus, or a Braille Sense Polaris, and or any other note taker. Next slide. So we kind of tackled each one of these, and we have been spending almost every waking hour for the last couple days trialing these different combinations. So we are going to kind of give you our experience, not with our just current experience, but also our experience, you know, working with students who use these devices. So the first one is laptop, screen reader, and Office Suite. So, and screen reader, you know, we tried both NVDA and JAWS as the most common screen readers used here in California. This has been very difficult and I would say nearly impossible for math. As you guys have all experienced with CASP testing, math has been the hugest pain point in testing, right? So we still had to emboss every single math question when you're doing when you're doing SBAC testing. And so what we think is that in our experience so far is that we've been able to get it to read math properly, but we were not able to input or type equations in Nemeth using a Braille display. The requirements that the student had to have is laptop with JAWS or screen reader, Microsoft Office, math type. The math type allowed Nemeth output on a Braille display. And the teacher had to have a laptop, Mathpix, Microsoft Office, and math type if the student was using a Braille display. Next slide. And guys, you know, John or Thomas, feel free to jump in if I missed anything.
Sure.
So the steps, or we kind of were trying to brainstorm like what exactly does a teacher need in order to, if they had this combination, laptop, screen reader, and Office. The student, if the student has a Braille display and requires Nemeth math output, the teacher would need to use Mathpix to snip the math image, paste it into math type, which requires a different software, right? You have to have purchased the math type software and have it on your laptop. Place the math type equation in Microsoft Word, and then send the document to the student, whether that's via email or uploading it onto Drive. If the student does not have a Braille display, this teacher could use Mathpix to snip the math image, place the snip into Microsoft Word. They would have to change the equation to linear, and then send this document to the student. And again, I will emphasize that this will only give access to the math to the student. The student cannot then input using Nemeth with their Braille display. And I'm giving an overview here, and we are going to go into demo. So Thomas, go ahead.
Perfect. So let me just go ahead and, so I'm going to just assume that I'm working with a student that does have a Braille display. All right. So the very first thing that I want to do is I'm actually going to open up a document. Here we go. And can you guys see this PDF that I'm showing?
Yes.
Perfect. So I've got this document open, and what we're talking about here is converting inaccessible file formats. So even though I can highlight, it really is not the best way to put the text into something. So I'm actually going to use this tool called Mathpix, and I've got it up and running here. I'm going to go ahead and clean this out. So I've got the Mathpix window here. I'm just going to click here on this upper left-hand corner. Alternatively, I could press Control-Alt-M, and it turns into a snipping tool. So the snipping tool, I'm just going to copy a simple equation. I've got 3 + 4 × 5. And Mathpix gives me this great little thing here that I can copy different types of equations. For this, I want to copy the MathML. Now that I've got that copied, I'm going to go ahead and open up Microsoft Word. And so I've got my math worksheet here. And if I want to paste this for somebody who has a Braille display, I'm going to want to go into Math Type, choose Inline. I'll paste this. I can go to File and close and return to document, or I could just say Control with F4. And then the math type equation shows up in this math worksheet here, right? I know it's a math type equation because when I click on it, it's got a bounding box, and so it's actually an image. Real quickly, I'll just show you guys how it works without using math type. If my student didn't have a Braille display and I wanted to insert the equation and we weren't worried about that Nemeth Braille output, I would just press Control V and paste it in there. And Mathpix is smart enough to put it in as an equation. So you can tell that it's a Microsoft equation because it's in this different type of bounding box, and I have some different options in here. So I'm actually going to want to change this to linear, right? So linear is basically going to have JAWS speak it to me with, better speech output. We found that not having it in linear, the speech output was quite a bit different. So if you're going to be doing just speech output, you want to just paste the MathML directly into the word processor and change it to linear. If you're going to want to use Braille output, you're going to want to do the math type, insert equation, and put it in there. I hope that was clear. Good. All right, so let me go ahead and close this out. All right, Eureka.
Okay, so thanks for showing us that, Thomas. So the second most commonly used equipment combination is laptop screen reader and Google Docs. And this also applies for students with Chromebooks or if you don't have access to Microsoft Word on the student's computer. So what we think is this solution can only allow for students to read math, same as the previous example, but not type equations using Nemeth. The student would need a laptop with screen reader and Google Docs, and the teacher would need laptop, Mathpix, and Google Docs. So the teacher steps for this is this my slide or is this John's slide?
You're in Google Docs, that was still you, I think.
Okay. So let's see. So again, the student can only listen to the math. And what the teacher, and we did try to actually connect this with Braille displays. We tried multiple Braille displays and it did not come up in Nemeth. Some of them, depending on the Braille display and how it was, like whether it's inline or linear, it did not come out well. So again, the student can only listen to the math and not type in their answer. So the student, let's see, uses the Mathpix to snap the image. The teacher will then paste the equation into Microsoft Word, change it to linear, and then upload the Word doc to Google Drive. They have to convert the DOCX, which is the Microsoft Word version, to a Google Doc, and then share that doc with the student. And so it's a little bit more, a few more steps, but we did find that we could easily read the math properly. Was this?
You gotta unmute yourself, Thomas.
Sorry about that. All right, so I've got my my Word document here, and yeah, what I'm going to be doing is showing you that workflow that we are following with this. Let me go ahead and minimize a couple things here. Bear with me just 1 second. All right, so the steps are pretty similar to what we've done before. So I've got my Microsoft Word document here, and I've already taken a picture of an equation with Mathpix, right? If I wanted to do it again, let's just go ahead and do 7 times 3 squared. I'm going to hit Control-Alt-M, and I'm just going to copy that equation. I'm going to hit Copy MathML, go back to my Word document, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit Control-V. So I've got 7 times 3 squared. I'm going to change this to linear, and then I'm going to save this. All right. Type. All right. So now that I've got it saved, I'm going to want to upload this into Google Drive, and so I can do that here. Oops. I've got too many browsers open.
So just to explain what's going on, we're just teaching you guys, we're showing you guys the teacher end, and then later if we do have time, we'll show you the student, what the student receives and how it's being read.
Oh, I jumped way ahead here. Let's.
While Thomas is getting that set up, I see a couple questions about people. Like somebody said, why couldn't you just type your math right into Microsoft Word? And you definitely could. What we're trying to accomplish here is hopefully find some tools that will make you the most efficient. If you're hand copying a whole, like even just 1 page of equations from say a math worksheet, you know, even just that is time consuming. So for example, we're using the Mathpix tool for that to help OCR math and then make it that transition over to Word a little easier than hand typing things in. So some of these, some of our kind of processes for things, you'll notice there's going to be multiple ways you could have done it. What we try to do is give you the most efficient tools to do it, so you're saving yourself and hopefully yourself as a teacher and hopefully your student time as well. Or of course, lots of this could be maybe big time savers for transcribers too. So
yeah, John's absolutely right. If you've ever tried to use something like MathType or another equation editor to type in equations, you'll find pretty quickly that it can be difficult, especially as the complexity of the equations go up. Most definitely. So what I've done is I've used Mathpix to snip an image. I pasted that into Microsoft Word, changed it to linear. I've uploaded the Word doc to Google Drive, and I've opened it up in Google Docs. I'll notice that my file name is gdoctest2, and it says .docx. So what we found is with the .docx file type, it actually doesn't read as well. So what you need to do is go into File, and then you want to choose Save as Google Docs. and then we'll save it as Google Docs. And it looks pretty much the same in this particular worksheet, but I do want to point out a couple things. If I go back to the GDoc test docx file, I've got these, the toolbar up here. So I've got, your file edit view, insert. There's a nice accessibility one on there. But if I go to it without the docx file format, I'll notice that I also have this add-ons. So there are some differences when you're working in a file out of Google Drive. If it is a docx versus a GDocs, there is difference. And we found that Google Docs actually reads better than reading a docx file out of Google Docs. So
and also just to note that it will, if you go back to your drive, it's almost like you have two of the same file names. So just make sure, you'll notice right there, it says just test, and the other ones will give the docx extension. And so this can get quite confusing. So then I would encourage you to just delete the docx file. So you don't have duplicate files.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. So let's go ahead and go back in here.
There's several questions in the chat about, does this also work for UEB? Thomas, did you want to answer that?
Sure.
Or John?
John, you want to go for it, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna vary a little bit situation to situation. But for example, if it's a screen reader you're using, you just need to make sure that your Braille output code is set to UEB, or that kind of thing. So it's also going to depend. Like we're going to talk a little bit about like Braille note takers later on. On the Braille note taker, you want to make sure your code is set to UEB, or you're using UEB or Nemeth Math. So it's going to be slightly varying, depend on the solution, the end solution. Because most of the technology has their own individual settings for those. But basically the process should be very similar. You just may need to check your settings.
Thank you, John. All right, so up next.
Oh, this is me. Okay, so just to kind of sum up the whole laptop screen reader Braille display, it's quite difficult, and you can see it's a little bit cumbersome, but it is possible to provide readable math to your student using the laptop with screen reader. What we have found more successful is more on the Braille note taker side. So the Braille Note Touch or the Braille Note Touch Plus, it allows the student to receive math and complete the math accessibly, like again, using either Nemeth or UEB Math, and to submit it back to their teacher. And the tool requirements is basically just a Braille Note Touch or a Touch Plus. On the teacher end, what the teacher would need is a laptop, Mathpix, Microsoft Word, and some kind of Braille transcription software, whether that's Duxbury, Braille Blaster is something that we also trialed and tested it pretty extensively. And it is something that's free, but of course it's not as good as a paid software such as Duxbury or Braille 2000, whichever your school uses. And so the workflow for the teacher would be yeah, a little edit there. So the teacher would basically use Mathpix to snap the image, and then paste it into MathType, place the MathType equation into Microsoft Word, convert it using Duxbury or Braille 2000 or Braille Blaster, export it as a BRF file, and then send that file to the student, either uploading it on Drive and or sending it as an email attachment.
Okay. So up next, we're going to do a quick demonstration of this. Let's see real quick. Oh, I guess it's me. All right. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to grab another equation here.
Thomas, if you would like, it's also part of my video.
Sure, if you want to go ahead and take it.
Yeah, or do you want to play the video I sent you?
Oh, you know what? That is.
I do both. I just did it all in one shot. I thought it'd make it a little easier.
Oh, okay. That's actually pretty easy. So yeah, let's go ahead and. Where are we? Here we go. Let me know if you guys can see this video.
We can see it, but we can't hear it.
Can't hear it? All right. So actually, I'm going to stop screen share. I'm going to start screen share with computer sound. There we go. And let me know about the volume.
Okay, today we're going to look at using Mathpix,
Perfect.
Duxbury, and MathType to convert math for students using Braille Note touches. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Mathpix again, and we're going to use that to OCR our math, bring that into a Word doc, import it into Duxbury, translate it to Braille, save it as a BRF so we can send it to our students, and then they could open up and key BRF on their Braille Note touch. All right, so we're just going to do one quick example to keep this a little bit short. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Mathpix tool, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus button up in the corner. That will make it so I can snip a math equation. We'll go ahead and snip out that math equation right there. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to minimize my program, and we need to open up a Word document here. So I'm just going to open up a new blank Word doc. Now we could insert some text and some math, but again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to do a quick example 1. Okay. And we're going to go to our MathType add-in, hit inline, and then we're going to switch over to our Mathpix tool again. We're going to hit the copy MathML button, come over to MathType, simply use our paste command, Control-V, paste that in there, say File, close and return to document, yes, save the changes, and there we are. Now we've inserted some math that we use Mathpix to OCR into our Word document using MathType. Now why we did that is because Duxbury for Braille translation does require the use of MathType to import a Word doc and honor the math equation. So that's why we use these tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this now. So save as. I save it to my desktop just so I can find it quickly. Example 1 is a fine name for this case. Go ahead and hit save, and we can close this out. So there it is on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and open up my Duxbury and go to File, and then Open. And I'm going to search for and find that file I just saved, example 1. There we go. Open that up. Now this window is pretty important because this is going to change depending on probably what state you're in and what Braille math code you use. So I'm in California. We use primarily Nemeth. So I would choose UEB BANA with Nemeth. But if you're in a state that is more UEB focused and does UEB math, you would probably just want to select just UEB. That would have UEB math in it as well. Again, so for me, I'm going to choose the one with Nemeth, and then I'm going to hit OK. They went ahead and imported that Word document for us, and it showed our math up there. Now, you see there's some kind of extra symbols and things like that. Don't worry about that. That's just some kind of text here. You'll notice that it's correct once we translate it to Braille. So I'm going to go to File, Translate, and there we have it in Braille. Now I'm going to go to File, Save As, and then I'm going to choose where I want to save it. I'm going to save it to my desktop. And then I click, there's a little Save As drop down, and I can choose 2 different types of BRFs. I don't believe there's really a big difference. I'm going to select the USA encoding since we're in the US and hit Save. Okay, now it's gone ahead and saved my BRF file I created in Duxbury, and we're all ready to send it over to our student. Now you could use email, you could use one of a cloud-based service like Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that, or even Google Classroom to send that file over. I'm going to email that file over, and we'll see it over on the Braille Note Touch and open that up.
Perfect.
Solid work, John.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, not too bad. All right, let's get back to where we're at here. So, all right. So we just went through the teacher side of the demo for the Braille Note Touch and Touch Plus. It is important to note that if you have a Touch or Touch Plus, it is the same. So there's not going to be any differences between those. Next up is the Braille Sense Polaris. So this is the easiest choice if your student has a Polaris. Eureka, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah. I'm laughing because Thomas works for HIMS, but I'm like, just a regular teacher that, so I don't have like biases, but I will say that in all of our experience, Polaris and math has been the easiest easiest combination. So if your student has a Polaris, then this is definitely the best way to go. So basically, this option allows the student to receive math and complete an assignment accessibly and very easily, all within the Polaris unit. All the student needs is a BrailleSense Polaris, and the teacher would just need a laptop, Mathpix, and Microsoft Office. So as a lot of teachers already have laptop in Microsoft Office, and this is where we are introducing the Mathpix tool. So the teacher steps would basically be the teacher uses Mathpix to snap the image, pastes it directly into Word, and then sends it via email or on shared any cloud-based like Google Drive, and that's all.
Let's go ahead and fix that. So it's not accurate. We assume that we do have a Polaris. All right. All right, time for the teacher demo. This one is rather quite easy. So I'm gonna just go ahead and start with a fresh document here. So I'm gonna go let's pick a really simple equation here. All right, let's just do this 3 plus 4 times 5. So I've got Mathpix open. I'm gonna hit that. I'm gonna snip this image. Oh no! Caitlin! It's okay. I can still show it anyway. Here. So let's just go ahead and open up Word. And so here's my Polaris sample doc, right? And I should be able to just paste my equation. My old equation was still in my clipboard, thankfully. So I've got 7 times 3 squared, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Save as Polaris sample math. Okay. And all I would have to do is email this to my student who's got the Polaris, or I can share it with them on Google Drive. And that's all that it takes for the teacher side if you've got the BrailleSense Polaris. All right. All right, so let's talk about some of the different tools that we've investigated. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my notes so I can tell you who's supposed to be doing each of these. Let's see.
Mathtype, that's me.
Yep. So John, yep.
So Mathtype is one of the tools that we've been using. Mathtype, for those who aren't familiar, is an equation building software. It allows you to quickly and easily type and create properly formatted math. Now, this isn't necessarily an accessibility only tool. This is actually a mainstream piece of software that's used by teachers and professors all around the world to create properly formatted math for quizzes and worksheets and tests and things like that. So it's used fairly widely in the assistive technology world. A lot of people use it just like I showed a little bit ago in the video for importing into a Word doc put your math equations in there and then import them into Duxbury. Duxbury will then honor the math from Mathtype, and you can convert it to Nemeth or UEB math or the math code of your choosing. And then from there, you could actually, emboss that on embosser or send it to a Braille note or something like that. So pros, it's easy to use. It's pretty straightforward. It's widely used. It's compatible with Microsoft Word and Google Docs, and it's good for Braille embossing or converting for Braille, the Braille Note Touch Plus in this case. The cons, its output is essentially, like Thomas showed earlier, essentially is an image that's alt tagged, which is not great for some screen readers and things like that. So it's not an ideal solution for all assistive technology, but it's really great for some. And then also price-wise, you're talking about $40 a year. Not amazing, but not bad either. It's a handy tool, but it's one of those ones with the price, I feel like you kind of have to know if that's gonna work for you. So after that, go ahead.
All right, next up, I'm gonna talk about a product that some people have heard about, but others have not. So it's called InftyReader, or INFTYREADER. And InftyReader we added to this list because it is a very powerful and feature-rich system. but we did find it a bit difficult to use. So the pros, you could actually scan an entire document, a multi-page document, directly into InfiniReader, and the software is accessible for screen reader users, which can be very important. Some of the cons, it is difficult to use because of the interface and the number of features. You do have less control over the scanning results, and the output is inconsistent when separating math and text. In particular, I found that if there's a piece of text alongside a math equation, that math equation isn't actually showing up as math. So there's going to be a bit of editing that has to happen. InfiniReader does cost $200 for a perpetual use license, or $40 for a 1-year license.
Maybe just to clarify there with InfiniReader, the reason we're talking about InfiniReader is not just because it does full page OCR, but that it does full page OCR, including math OCR. That's the really big deal with InfiniReader.
Yeah.
Most OCRs do not touch math. So that's, in this case, why InfiniReader is getting a mention here.
And yeah, so it does full page, it does math OCR. When the math is OCR'd, it actually inputs the same way that we found with Mathpix. So it's, you know, editable. It's a Microsoft equation. So it's a really good option if you don't mind doing a lot of work. Actually, if well, I'll talk about this here again in just a second. Yeah, so next is Scientific Notebook. So for those of you that are using Scientific Notebook, Eureka, I don't know if you have the numbers there, but what were the numbers for Scientific Notebook?
For Scientific Notebook, 8%, so 12 out of 148 people who answered.
Yeah, all right. So you can create fully accessible documents with Scientific Notebook. There is a very high learning curve. You're going to have to basically retype everything. From what I found, I've tried to paste in LaTeX and some other different options, and it just didn't really take. And it is expensive. The price is $799, which is pretty expensive when you're talking about a piece of software. The next one up is Equatio. So it is pretty easy to use, and you do have 2 options to choose from. So you can install it as a Chrome extension, and that's going to work in Google Docs, or you can install on a computer, and you can snip equations everywhere. So when I showed you the example of snipping an equation out of a PDF, Equatio cannot do that with the Chrome extension. You actually have to do the full software install. Another good thing about it is it does have that intuitive interface. So some of the drawbacks, the software isn't inherently accessible to blind users because you do have to use snipping. You have to snip an image, and so creating that snipping bounding box is inherently inaccessible. Like I said, the Chrome extension is free, but the computer software requires a purchase. It is currently free for teachers from what I saw, but I added that last minute and I didn't actually sign up for it because I'm not a teacher, but it might be possible. And then output to Google Docs still doesn't provide accessible equations, but that's due to poor math support within Google Docs. So the price of Equatio is $100 per user for an annual license.
I also wanted to mention really quickly about Equatio, because I saw some questions about a comparison between Equatio and Mathpix. I just wanted to mention that Equatio actually uses our software for the snipping aspect that Thomas just mentioned. So you should expect to see the exact same result if you're using Equatio to do snipping. I just wanted to mention that.
Yep. Perfect. I'm going to actually show a couple other examples real quick. Let's go ahead and let's go back to here. So what I'm actually going to show you, thank you to, I think it was Susan Osterhaus from TSBVI for pointing this out to me. Desmos does have a nifty little Braille demo thing that you can do in here. So if you go to desmos.com/braille-demo/index.html, you could go ahead and try this out for yourself. So you have an option. First thing you have is an option between Nemeth and UEB. So I'm going to choose Nemeth. Next option, we have something called 6-key input, and I'm going to have that checked. If I uncheck it, then I'm just going to be typing using my regular keyboard and numpad, but I'm going to do 6-key entry input. And then Braille, I just go ahead and type into the Braille equation. So I could just do y equals x plus 2. So I just type that using, what is it, SDF and then JKL directly from my keyboard, from my laptop keyboard. And then I get the formatted math down below. You can actually, this formatted math is copyable. So you can actually highlight this, copy it, and then paste it back into a Word document. But when you paste, it's pasting back as literary. It's not actually pasting as math according to Braille.
Yeah, and the other thing that I just wanted to point out is, so this would be for the student end, right? And they would 6-key input, and that's not something that we normally have our kids do on a QWERTY keyboard. And the other thing when using this with a screen reader, as the student is 6-key inputting, whatever they're inputting, it's reading something different. So it could be very confusing for the student. And with it connected to a Braille display, it doesn't show it properly as well. So this the student would have to be like, make absolutely no errors because what they're hearing and also what they're reading is not consistent.
That being said, it is one of the only ways to write Braille math on a computer with a screen reader, right? Yeah. Worth mentioning.
Yeah. The other option is from Pearson. So if you go to accessibility.pearson.com/AEE, you've got the accessible equation editor. This allows you to do also type with 6-key, I believe. So we found that when we were trying this, we were able to 6-key with a computer or just a regular keyboard. We tried connecting it with a Braille display and trying to do 6-key entry, but we found that a little bit difficult to do. That easily could be because I wasn't following the instructions all the way. Or yeah, just could be due to my ignorance, but I would be interested to hear what other people have experienced with this. And I know a couple of people who are involved with this project or on this webinar today. So maybe at the end, if you guys could comment on that, that'd be great. All right, let's go on to the next slide here. So
I just wanted to have a quick correction, Thomas, on the
sure.
scientific notebook pricing. So they have different packages. So the scientific workplace was $8.99, but if you just want scientific notebook, it is $249. And anytime you do an upgrade, it is $125. So it is a lot more affordable.
Great. I'm glad I didn't have to buy it for this because I would have bought the wrong thing.
Under the other options, I do think we should probably give a quick honorable mention to Perky Duck from Duxbury. It is a free, it's basically Duxbury that only supports 6-key entry. You would be doing 6-key entry with your keyboard again. I have not tried it with a Braille display, so I don't want to make any promises there, but you could use FDS and JKL as your dots 1, 2, 3 and do 6-key entry that way. There is no back translation from the Braille though. So it's probably not a great way for students to turn things in, but if they are turning into a TBI who can effectively read the Braille or Braille math, that is a free possible solution.
Another notable shout out I'd like to give is to Braille Blaster. If you guys haven't probably guessed by now, we've tested a whole lot of different software over the past month. We've tested a lot. Braille Blaster, yeah, we were able to do 6-key entry, but it wasn't that great when you're using a screen reader. So like if you're using JAWS, it was doing double translation and a whole bunch of stuff, so the speech output wasn't great. We kind of got the Braille output to work, but then it would only show up as ASCII in the document, and yeah. So there's a close shout out, almost there, Braille Blaster, but you got a little ways to go.
It could be used as a good free alternative to Duxbury for creating BRF files to send to a touch as well.
Yes, actually, that's a really good point. So if you're one of those teachers that doesn't have Duxbury, and you do have a student that's using like a Braille Note Touch or a Touch Plus, you can use Braille Blaster to create those BRF files. But John, you were saying that you had some issues with that. Was it the file output?
I did, but I actually think it's actually my Braille Note. So because I ended up sending shout out to Rachel Feinberg from Humanware. She's awesome. I sent some of my files that I did translate with Braille Blaster to her, and she was able to use them just fine with her key BRF. So I think that solution should actually indeed work just fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it is open source and free, so I tend to favor Duxbury when possible, simply because I believe in the accuracy of their translation. With Braille Blaster, they use LibLewis, which LibLewis is not bad, but they typically are a little bit behind because they're free and they're open source, so they don't quite have the, we'll just say, the attention to detail that I think Duxbury has with their translation. So not saying it's bad, it's definitely a great option for being free, but I tend to prefer Duxbury.
Cool. John, you want to take the Mathpix one?
Yeah, so Mathpix is the tool that you've probably seen in several of our demonstrations so far. This is a really cool tool that we found for OCRing math. So in a lot of teacher or transcriber situations, one of the big downsides to using something like math type I showed before, or simply even hand typing it into like Microsoft Word, is you're literally back and forth copying and writing out all of it and retyping all the math, which can be crazy time consuming, especially if it's getting complex. You know, maybe something 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, that's easy. But you get into like, square roots and, all different logarithms and, exponents and things, and it gets really complicated to get that math and to get it in properly formatted Nemeth math. So Mathpix is something we've been using as a tool to snip. It OCRs and then gives you the option to copy it in a whole bunch of really easy formats like MathML, which MathML is the format that basically MathType wants to insert into Word, or MathML is the format that the Polaris wants, so you can just paste it right in. So it makes life a lot easier. So super easy to use and creates accessible and editable digital outputs for us. The kind of con side of it, though, is it is purely a visual user interface. It is not particularly accessible because you are going to have to use a mouse to actually snip out a picture of your equations. Not only that, but probably not a huge downside, because I don't think a ton of people are using Google Docs for math, simply because of some accessibility issues we pointed out earlier, but it does not have a direct input for Google Docs. You could, if you want to, use the Mathtype add-in for Google Docs in combination with Mathpix. That's what we've done. Price-wise, I think they have a fantastic price for $5. I think, is that per month? I think that's a really great deal for how much power and how much time that's going to save you.
And
Can I just
ahead.
one more thing about the cons? I think we tried to snip multiple equations and some with some like words, and when we did a chunk, we were not able to get that into.
It's not going to offer that full page effect,
Right.
like the MT reader was. Yeah.
And I can talk more about that in my little demo.
So Caitlin's going to give us a real demo of how it works, not just the quick little previews we've been showing you so far.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I wanted to add about the cons, especially talking about Google Docs, if you remember the workflow that we discussed earlier, you actually want to paste into Microsoft Word, upload to Google Docs, convert it to a Google Doc file.
Right.
We found that to be the most, it's a bad workflow, we know, but it produced the most accessible output for your students. I'm sorry, but
yeah, you as people can probably tell, some of these solutions are not again, I think Eureka said the magic bullet earlier, but some of them are, there hasn't at least been a widely or commonly used way to do some of this at all. So we are giving you the best we've been able to find. And of course, if anybody else has better solutions, by all means, put it in the comments. We'd love to look into it.
Yeah. All right. And that brings us to Caitlin.
Okay, thank you guys. So I'm Caitlin, like I already said, I'm the co-founder of Mathpix, and basically what Mathpix specializes in is extracting structured data from images and converting that into different formats. And we use AI to do that. So basically what that means is we take an image and we give back the digital representation of what's in that image. And generally that's text, math, and also we can read tables, so tabular data in an image. But what we started with and what we're best at is math, which is why we're called Mathpix. And so I saw a lot of questions, and so I want to try to answer as many of them as possible. So first, like we said, the pricing, it's free up to 100 uses per month for anyone in the educational field. So basically everyone who's on here, you would count for that. If you want to use it an unlimited amount of times, then the cost is $4.99 per month. Or you can get a year license, and that's $49.99 per month. So that's the pricing. I also saw people asking how to access it. You can download the apps at mathpix.com. And all you have to do is download the app and then create an account. And the creating of an account is really important because that is how you're able to sync the information from between the mobile app and the desktop app, or between different apps. And I'm going to show you how that works in just a second. Yeah, I'm going to come back to some other things that I saw, but first I'm going to do the demo. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. Okay.
Yeah, we can.
So this is the mobile app, and I'm going to show you, I can just take a picture here. So this is something that I just wrote in my notebook, and it scans it and converts it. And so I also have the desktop app up here, and you can see that it's already synced. So like Thomas already showed you and John already showed you, you're going to click the copy MathML format here, come into your Microsoft Word document. Oh, whoops, sorry. And just paste. Oh, okay.
Your the math type equation, the math type plugin that you have, tried to steal it.
It did try to steal it. Oh
Yeah.
no. So I guess I have to. Do you know how to turn it off?
I'm not sure. Try to do paste again. Choose create an OMML.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so there we
There
go.
we go.
Pasted it in. Sorry about that. So that's basically how you would get it from a notebook through the mobile app to your desktop, and you could paste into a Word document. I'm also going to show you, because I did see questions about this. You can snip from anything on your screen. So that could be a PDF, that could be a Word document. It doesn't matter what format it's in, because basically what we're doing is we're just turning it into an image. So this is an example of an image, or like we showed you before, there could be like a PDF that you want to snip an equation from. So here I'm just going to enter the keyboard shortcut, take a screenshot, and there's a result right there. So we would copy MathML, and just like we did before, paste in the equation. And like we were saying before, if you wanted to use this with Duxbury, then you would want to change this to linear format, which you can do just by clicking this drop down and click linear. So that's how you can use the Mathpix app on mobile and on desktop with Microsoft Word. And then that fits into the other workflows that we already talked about today. So now I'm
just to add to the clarification, so you want to change it to linear, not for Duxbury, but for a screen reader to read it properly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if we're doing Duxbury, it still has to be a math type image. Actually, do you want to just show?
Yeah, sure.
How to paste that right into math type?
Absolutely. So
it's not mind blowing, but.
So then we would just do the same thing. You can use the MathML format with math type. And let's make a new line. You can click inline here and just paste. So the MathML is code, but when you paste it in, it's going to appear as the rendered formula. And then we just put that right in. So now it's the image like we were looking at before with the other math type example. And so maybe if you want to put the slideshow back on, but there are a lot of questions that I saw that I want to touch on. So do you want me to answer them now?
Let's go ahead and get through the rest of this. I see that we're going over time a little bit. So let's get through the slides, the rest of it, and then we'll get back to the questions. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Awesome.
I did want to just mention really quick, everybody just saw Caitlin doing this via Mac, which is cool because there's not a ton of assistive technology software for Macs, but there is Duxbury for Mac, there is Mathtype for Mac, and there is Mathpix for Mac.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire process I showed earlier for doing stuff to convert for a Braille note, touch, to read it on there, you could have done if you were a teacher on a Mac, and there's not a lot of stuff that can do that. So that is kind of cool because there are some teachers who are stuck with a Mac, or maybe they're using their Mac at home and don't have Windows available to them. So I thought it would be worthwhile mentioning.
Yeah, our app is available on Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, and Android. So basically, regardless of the hardware that you're using to create materials for your students, Mathpix will fit into that workflow.
Very cool.
And I just also want to say I love the mobile option, just because you don't have to go like scan a book. A lot of teachers have physical math books, and in this way you can just take a picture with your phone and have it automatically synced. And I think that's
right. You can
flow a lot faster.
Yeah, I hear horror story after horror story about transcribers or TVIs who are doing the transcribing who the teacher walks up and is like, here's a worksheet that needs to be transcribed to Braille for your student in the next couple of days, and they're literally copying and retyping everything. And again, you could just whip out your cell phone, snap some pictures, it just syncs over, paste it in, boom, you're done. That huge time saver.
Yeah, and we can read handwriting, whether it's in a notebook, if it's on a whiteboard or a blackboard, we can read that. We can read printed math out of a textbook, or like if it's already on your screen, of course. So we can handle many different types of images. And we can also handle more than one simple equation at once. Like we can handle quite complicated math. I just wanted to use a simple example just for teachers who are working with younger students. And we can handle multiple lines of math. But right now we're still working on perfecting it in terms of the formatting. So that's something that we're still improving for this particular use case.
Yeah, thank you for that demo, Caitlin. So I want to go into like how a lot of teachers currently are delivering math, or some of the different ways that teachers are delivering math. So the most, I think a lot of traditional way, and somebody also wrote this in the chat, was that they literally would emboss it and mail it. So you create the math in Duxbury or whatever you use, and then go to your school, emboss it, and then mail it out. And so with the given current situation, like that, it sucks, right? It's very time consuming. You need transcription software, you need access to an embosser, and then you need to send the embossed copies via snail mail. Depending on how you send it, Free Matter for the Blind, it could take days, could take weeks. And then the turnaround of like, how does your student then, deliver it back to you? Next slide, Thomas. So we decided to do some like examples of some case studies. Earlier we showed you on the teacher end what it looks like for what the teacher would need to do. And then this was kind of more on the student end, what it looks like. So the thing with Google Docs and a screen reader and a laptop, the most important thing is that your student needs to be able to enable screen reader support and enable Braille support. And here I put in some links, which CSB has created some like how-to guides of how to easily enable that. But the student cannot input the answer, so they can read but not write, and that sucks. Next slide. It's the same case for Microsoft Word and screen readers. So the student has a laptop and hopefully a Braille display and a screen reader. Same thing, they can read and not necessarily input. John.
Yeah, so you can play the rest of the video for this, but right before you do, so this is the kind of the student end of how you can access math on a Braille Note Touch, or Touch Plus in this case. So go ahead and roll the rest of the video there, Thomas.
And what it's like just we translate it to Braille. Some of the BRF file I created in Duxbury,
Can you hear it okay?
and we're all ready to send it over to our student. Now you could use email, you could use one of like, cloud-based service like Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that. Excellent. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and I emailed that file to myself. Now I'm on my Braille Note Touch, and we're going to go ahead and get that email, download it, and then open it up in our key BRF. So from my main menu, I'm going to press E to jump to email. Enter to open that up. New message. Go down to read. Press enter. Inbox message list. And there we go. There's my email. It's already popped up. Press enter to open that email. 126 web view. I'm going to go up to open attachments view. Hit M to jump to the more options button. Press enter on that. And then press enter on save. Now this is going to go ahead and download that file for me. In a moment here. There we go. Now it's been saved. I'm going to press space with all 6 dots to go home. I'm going to press A then to jump to all applications. Press enter on that. Then I'm going to press K to go to key BRF. Press enter to open that. Okay. And let's go back up here and I'm going to hit open. Example 1. Enter. And there we are. There is our BRF file that we created, and our student can now read it and edit it if they want to. Now, this is a slight limitation of the Braille Note Touch. Really, key BRF is the best way to get math over to the Touch. Alternatively, if it was just text, we could have sent a Word document and opened that up inside Keyword. But from here, at least the student can access their math. Then they can switch over to Keyword and use Keyword and Key Math to write the responses to their math questions. All right.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty easy once you've done the conversion process. I emailed that over to my Braille Note Touch, but again, you could have used a variety of different services. You could even posted this in Google Classroom as a downloadable file. It could have been email again, it could have been Google Drive or Dropbox, or basically any of those cloud-based services that chances are your school is probably already using the G Suite, so Google Drive or something like that, or email is probably an easy solution. It's really quick, easy, and then you can open it up. And we're using key BRF because the word processor inside the Touch doesn't have the ability to display math natively. If anybody is a Touch user or has been working with their student in Touch and has used Keyword together with Key Math, and you paste in your math equations that you've written from Key Math into Keyword, you will have noticed that it pops up in what they call Sim Braille, which basically it doesn't back translate to like properly print formatted Braille. And that's kind of the limitation there of the word processor. So sending it in a BRF file format is the easiest way to do that. They can open it up, read it, and then quickly switch from reading it by double tapping the square button, I believe it is, that will quick switch you over to the last app that you used, over to the word processor, and write responses, and then use Keyword or Key Math together with Keyword to input math responses. And then it could be emailed back as a print PDF to the teacher. All right, moving on.
All right, up next, we're going to talk about doing this with the BrailleSense Polaris. And let's see if I could get this to work here. I'm trying to show my, there we go. So you guys can see my Polaris, right? All right. And I got a ton of notifications. So like we showed earlier with the workflow, the process of actually creating a math document, it's actually the easiest of all the different options. And there's some other unique advantages when it comes to the Polaris that make it a really good choice if you're going to be doing math. One of which is our Google Drive app. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into File Manager. And let me turn my speech on.
Voice on. Flash disk 1-3 list item.
How's that volume, John?
Good.
Cool. I'm just going to go ahead and go into Google Drive. I'll press G.
Google Drive 3 list item.
Press enter. So what it's doing
Classroom
is
folder 111 list item.
it syncs up to my Google Drive folder. I've placed this document in the math conversion webinar.
Math conversion webinar folder 411 list item.
Press enter.
Algebra worksheet.docs 112 list item.
And I think, which one was it that I created?
You did GDoc test 2.
GDoc test 2, okay.
Or GDoc test docx. Either one of those have math you put.
So I'll go to the GDoc test doc
Math conversion
2.
flyer doc test 2 docs 1112 list item.
I'll press enter here.
1 objects copied.
So copied it
Doc
directly
test 2
from Google
docs
Drive.
1112 list item. Loading.
Copied from
Doc
Google
test 2
Drive,
docs open.
and then it opens up right in here. And
I lied to you.
7 vertical dash line times 3 superscript 2 equal.
it
Doc
was.
test 2 docs
I'll
1112
just do
list
another
item.
one real quick. Polaris sample. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and save this file. I'm going to slap this into my Google in here. Minimize all this sort of stuff. All right, so I've got Polaris sample math on my Google Drive folder here. I'm gonna go back to my Polaris. I'm gonna press, what is it? Enter R?
Rename dialog.
Nope,
Doc
space R.
test 2 docs 11 refreshing. Doc test 2 docs 1213 list
And
item.
there's my Polaris sample math docs.
Polaris sample math docs A13 list item.
Press enter.
1 objects copied. Polaris sample math docs A13 list item. Loading. Polaris sample math docs open.
And there we go. I'm just gonna go ahead and down scroll to it.
7 times 3 superscript 2 baseline equal.
All right, so I've got my equation there. I'm gonna move my cursor there, equals. I'm just gonna say, I don't know, whatever.
2.
Oops.
2. Number sign 2.
There we go. And that's how you complete an assignment on the Polaris. So the teacher, just caught snips from Mathpix, pastes it into Google or into a docx file, shares it with the Polaris. The Polaris opens it up in the word processor, and you just navigate to your equation, and you're good to go. We'll press Enter S.
Saving. Save complete.
It's saved.
Uploading. 0. 100 Polaris sample math done 1 files uploaded.
All
7
right.
times 3 superscript 2 baseline equal 2.
Close out of
Polaris
this.
sample math docs A13 classroom folder
I can go
111
back
list
here
item.
into my thing here, and where is that? Polaris sample math. I'll open this bad boy up. I can open up in Google Docs or Microsoft Word. And there's the equation with my changes, with my answer. So that was it. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think as Eureka said before, I don't think any of us want to be, well, except maybe Thomas, want to be super biased here, but the Polaris did kind of come out the clear winner as far as efficiency and time. It was just because there's the least steps and the least tools involved.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a from teacher to student back to teacher in like a minute.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty cool.
So thank you guys.
Yeah.
Caitlin?
Thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, Caitlin.
Yes. So, like I mentioned before, we do have a student or educational plan that we give away automatically to anyone that signs up with their educational email. But we do know that there are a lot of people that are involved in education and don't necessarily have a .edu email. And so as a gift, we wanted to give everyone who participated and watched, came to this webinar, the educational discount, which basically gives you double the amount of usage for free every month, which is 100 snips. So when you sign up for an account, we're basically gonna have a list of everyone who came to the webinar today, and we will make sure that you get this special discount.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Final verdict, Eureka.
So, to prepare for this webinar, I think the between us, we've been on like nonstop Zoom calls, trying all different kinds of software. And we were first really sweating And then we were like, ah, the middle one.
USB data mode on.
And
Refreshing.
then, you
Voice
know,
off.
I think ultimately the future looks promising. I'm hopeful that, you know, in that we are going to get better and faster ways in order to deliver math that is accessible on a Braille display with Nemeth, using a laptop. I know, you know, with Braille note takers have definitely superseded laptops and Braille displays. But I do think that it's coming in the future. I feel like it's near, and so hence the hopeful crossing fingers. But
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, well, I mean, I did see a couple other questions, and like I would be happy to answer them now that it's the end, or if anybody like has any burning questions that they haven't mentioned yet. But also, like, if you can't stay on this webinar, we totally understand, and please feel free to reach out to me directly via email, and we would be happy to answer any questions about Mathpix, or if you have suggestions on how we can improve for your particular use case and what you're using with your student. We really want to hear from you. We're still very new to this space and we're learning a lot, but we really want to help move this whole space forward in terms of creating the best way for students to consume math, whether it be you know, with a screen reader or with some kind of Braille, I mean, embossed Braille or Braille tablet like we saw today. We really want to help kind of push the progress in this field. So please, like, feel free to reach out to us, and we really want to talk to you and learn more about what you're doing with your students and how we can basically make your life easier. I did see some questions about if we can process images of graphics or graphs. We can't. So basically what we can process right now is images of printed or handwritten English text or Latin alphabet text. We can process math equations up to very complicated, like high-level equations. We can process some other alphabets, so we can process images of Hindi, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Russian, and Vietnamese right now. I'm not sure how applicable that is, like, to this use case. And we can process images of tables. So tabular data, that might be useful for teachers who are creating full textbooks that might have tabular, like, tables in them. Let's see. Oh, I saw someone also asking about full pages. Right now, we can't support processing an image of a full page, but we are currently developing this ability, and we're hoping to release this really soon. So if you sign up for an account, you'll hear about it because we'll probably send some kind of announcement to all of our users. So you can know that that's coming. I'm trying to see if there were any other, oh, maybe I can check are there any other questions?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
ton.
we got lots of
Okay,
questions.
I'm like,
like 100 questions.
All right, let's go.
Oh, somebody wants to see an example of tables. So yeah, maybe you guys can, I'll pull up an image of a table and show, but
Yeah.
You guys can.
Get that.
Could we address this question? Because there were several people who asked, does this work, you know, does this process work on a Braille Note Apex and or Braille Sense, not the Polaris or Touch Plus? And I'm thinking no, but
I believe at least the Apex does support BRF files, so theoretically that could work.
yeah, but then their Nemeth math input is limited, right? Like
Correct.
to certain.
That is true. Yeah.
So that answers that question.
Yeah. Somebody asked about doing things with an iPad. We didn't really cover iPads. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Eureka, I don't think we found any good math solutions for iPads, unfortunately.
No, we didn't dive super. I don't think most of our testing has been, you know, Braille note takers and laptops, but I haven't come across anything that's like really great for math on an iPad.
Yeah. So regarding iPad, the only way I've actually found to input Nemeth and use like a calculator, Desmos does have an iOS app, but using a standard Braille display with it, it's actually quite difficult because it utilizes several keys that common Braille displays just don't have. We were able to get it to work pretty well in the QBraille, but it was still pretty darn difficult, and that's the only thing that I've seen to input Nemeth into iOS. So if anybody else has any suggestions, now's the time to make them.
Unfortunately not.
All right, so next question. Did you try Math Player with MathType and NVDA? So I did try to use Math Player, MathType, and NVDA. I could not get it to work for me because what I found is that Math Player requires you to have Office 32-bit. I am using Microsoft Office 365, which is a 64-bit version, a 64-bit software. So I installed Math Player and I got everything ready to go, and it just did not work for me. I'm going to assume that if you have Office 365, you're probably going to run into the same issue that I had. If you are running a 32-bit version of Office, particularly Microsoft Word, then it could be a good solution for you, but we just weren't able to test it, so we can't say if it's good or not.
I think around 2015, 2016, Office switched their default from 32-bit to 64-bit because now everything you buy is 64-bit. I don't think they sell 32-bit computers anymore. So yeah, we didn't do a whole lot of testing with that because chances are if you bought a computer or Office in the last 4 or 5 years, you won't have 32-bit unless you intentionally went out and found and installed 32-bit.
Could we answer maybe the people who raised their hands?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do that.
Go ahead and do that.
Laura Murphy, I'm going to unmute you and go ahead and ask your question. If you're still there or not. Okay, going down the list.
With this, by the way, with our particular setup, we click the allow to talk and then the person has to unmute themselves. So Laura, you're going to have to unmute yourself. If you're using a Windows PC, you can press Alt-A to unmute yourself. There you go.
So the one question I would have is, we're showing how Mathpix works with just math. What happens when there's some words around it? Does it pick up the words too?
Sure. So basically the way that MathML, the format works is that it can only have math in it. And so if you do take a snip and it has kind of mixed math and text, you'll see in the app that there will be a row for each MathML, so each equation, and the text will be separate. So what I would recommend right now would be to try to separate the text from the math, but you can snip the text separately. So that's just a limitation of the MathML format that Microsoft Word supports.
Thank you.
Still a really excellent question though, because lots of the type of things we might have teachers converting could be something like an inaccessible PDF that you can't even highlight the text and copy and paste out of. So if you did have the Mathpix tool, although you would probably be just snipping just the text and then snipping just the math equation, you could still snip that chunk of text out of that or offline or out of a picture or again with your phone. And that will be a huge time saver over, over typing it in, and you don't have to have a separate OCR tool. So very cool.
Okay, thank you.
And we are working on how we can kind of improve, kind of streamline that a little bit better. So.
Okay, the next person who's raised their hand is Kathleen McGann. I'm going to allow, oh, it says that you're using an older version of Zoom. Sorry, can't. Okay, next person, Naomi Danso. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Naomi.
I wanted to ask if a Braille Blaster is able to produce Nemeth.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
If you are using Braille Blaster and you don't know how to do that, up top there's a settings menu. You drop that down, there's an option for translation settings, and switch that to UEB and Nemeth Math. and I'll
Great.
do it. And
Thank
make
you
sure
so
you
much.
set as default. If you don't set as default, it forgets it next time and switches back to UEB.
Do you guys
Okay.
want me to, sorry, do you guys want me to show how you can use Mathpix with ASCII Math into Braille Blaster, or?
Yeah, actually, that would be a really cool thing. Yeah, should we demo that really fast?
Sure, let me,
Let's, yeah, go ahead and set that up.
okay, yeah, I'll set that up.
And while you're setting it up, Kathleen, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question. All right, Kathleen, whenever you're ready, you can unmute yourself.
I noticed that y'all said you are going to allow us to have this recording. Is there any way to get the PowerPoint itself?
Yeah, the PowerPoint and the recording are both going to be posted on our website, the HIMS website. You'll get an email notification when those are both available.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Nancy Irwin, I'm gonna allow you, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, so, oh, my headphones are low. Anyway, so I am visually impaired and becoming a TVI, and so I was curious. I noticed, unfortunately, Mathpix is not going to be a tool that I can utilize, but I wondered if you guys had any suggestions for something that I might be able to use other than, unfortunately, sitting there with Duxbury and 6-key entry everything. Just a question.
Yeah, so the best one that I found that is accessible is Infty Reader, INFTY Reader. It's all one word. It was developed by a blind professor in Japan. So it is accessible with the screen reader, and it is a really great tool. The problem that you're going to face with Infty Reader is that when you have a document that's a mix of text and math, you got to scan the whole page at once. You can't pick and choose, obviously. But if there is math mixed in with text, Infty Reader doesn't really know how to handle that very well. And so you can scan the document just fine, but there's probably going to be a bit of cleanup that still has to be done. But it should get you 90% of the way there. So
I typically use my iPad to look at things if I need to anyway, just to kind of make sure there's edits and stuff, because unfortunately OpenBook is awful with things like worksheets and stuff, and so I just kind of was curious if there was anything better.
Yeah.
Hey Nancy, what would be the best way for you to be able to input into a document, like in your dream? Like what would be the best for you?
Oh wow. If I could just type it directly into the document, that would be great. Because I use a Braille display, but I also, I can obviously use the numbers too. But, and I'll be honest with you, I found math type to be overwhelming, confusing, and just something that I didn't feel comfortable touching. So when it came to, because I just completed my student teaching actually, when it came to having to do worksheets for a second grader, when they were simple, vertical math, I could do that without a problem, even though OpenBook butchered it. But it would be really amazing if it was, frankly, I don't know why APH hasn't jumped in here and worked on this too, because why not, but anyway, I'd love to be able just to type it directly into the document. I understand that Math ML is different, but it would definitely make things easier for everybody if that was an option, even if we had to have something running in the background that I could say, I'm typing math now, use this mode. You know what I mean? Kind of like with how the Braille note does key math. You put it in math mode, type your math, undo math mode, and you're done, and you can go to typing text again. So yeah, it would be kind of neat if that was an option.
So Nancy, it is an option, but the thing that you have to remember is what the output type is going to be for your student, right? So if you're going to be giving it to somebody and you want them to be able to read and write back in Nemeth, the limitations are going to be pretty intense. So unless the person's using like so if you've got a student that's using a Polaris, it's
Mhm.
really easy. You just open up Microsoft Word. When you're on a blank line, all you have to do on your regular keyboard is press Alt and equals, and that puts it into math mode. You type your equation, you press enter, and then it goes back into text mode. That is how you enter Math ML directly into a Microsoft Word document. Where
Wow.
Caitlin's company comes in with Mathpix for sighted people like myself. I would much rather just snip an equation and paste it in there, especially
Yeah,
anything
absolutely.
that's complex. I mean, if I've got superscripts or subscripts, I mean, long division, I
Yeah,
just don't want to deal
absolutely.
with it. But you
'Cause, no,
can
I mean,
do it.
I don't want to do it either. I mean, that's kind of why
Yeah.
my professor's response of, well, you're just going to have to 6-key entry. I kind of went, oh God.
Yep.
And so I had to get my cooperating teacher to kind of help with some of those really complicated things that I couldn't do, which, that is what it is, I guess. So,
Great.
anyway,
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
your.
Nancy.
Thomas, could you quickly answer this question? Can we do this whole process can Polaris access Microsoft OneDrive the same way that it does Google Drive?
So the way that I showed it, the answer is no. So what I showed on the Polaris is our proprietary app that just integrates directly into the file manager and with Google Drive. You can use a OneDrive app, so you can download it from the Play Store and access your files that way. I do want to point out there is, I've seen this happen a lot where people want to use a particular tool because that's kind of just the standard, right? So if you're going to be doing Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever your school system is using, it's very important to remember that in our current situation, right, what you're trying to do is get a particular kid a document, an assignment for that kid to complete. Don't forget email. Email works, right? You don't have to open up Google Drive and do all this sort of stuff and get complicated with it. Email works fine. So don't forget that.
Thanks. On the Polaris, do you still need to make sure that the equations are on their own line without text or problem numbers?
Kind of. So I'm not entirely sure why, but sometimes it works really great, even with text in line, and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not entirely sure. The best practice is to have an equation on its own line. You can do things like 1 period space and then write your equation. That's fine. Nemeth and UAB account for that. That's fine. But if you're just slapping an equation like inside a block of text, I wouldn't recommend that. I do a separate line.
Yeah.
I had a quick question I saw that I wanted to address, and it's a real fast one. Somebody asked, can math documents be embossed as well? And I kind of forgot to mention this, but the entire process I went through with taking Mathpix, snipping, putting it into Word doc, and then importing into Duxbury to convert it as a BRF, that exact same process, identical, works to import it into Duxbury and then to emboss it on a Braille embosser of your choice as well. Or Caitlin's going to show how you could bring it into Braille Blaster as well. It's actually even quicker because you can take out the Microsoft Word part of the equation, Microsoft Word and math type part of the equation, and go directly into Braille Blaster and then emboss to your embosser. So yeah, either of those methods would work great.
Caitlin, did you want to go ahead and show us that?
Yeah, so I'll do that now. Okay. So, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Braille Blaster. Full disclosure, I'm not super well-versed in using the software, but I do know that if you're using our app, so let's just use this, this one here that we already had. So under this data tab right here, we have some other formats, and one of them is ASCII math. And so I have this copied to my clipboard here, and then I can go up to the top and click math, and then ASCII Math Hub. And for some reason, the display is a little weird on my Mac, but I'm just going to paste this in and insert math. And then it's really small, but the Braille is here.
Yeah, no, I think by default, it just came out as UEB Braille. You can change
you
that
can
if you
change
go,
it.
yeah, under settings, and then translation settings.
Right.
And
I
then
have
right
UEB
there.
plus
Oh,
now.
perfect. You already did it. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that same drop down, you could switch it to UEB Math. It's so tiny, I can't see right here.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
But you could do
I
either
can't
or.
figure out how to make it bigger. But yeah, so the format there is ASCII math.
And actually, this is really cool because if you're a teacher working from home and you don't have access to Duxbury right now, and you have students that have a Touch or a Touch Plus, Braille Blaster is free. You're going to be getting Mathpix for free. So you're able, so if you have a Touch or Touch Plus student and you're struggling with math, you're going to have all of the tools that you need at no cost to be able to provide them with math homework. They're probably going to hate you for it, but it's there.
Caitlin, did you also want to show the tables? I know you were going to show that.
Yeah, so the table support is a little, so basically the formats that we support for tables are TSV, LaTeX, and HTML. And so I'm not actually sure that it's super relevant in terms of this conversation, unless anyone's using those three formats, HTML, TSV, or LaTeX.
I don't think they're commonly used, at least with the teachers that I work with. And we can just keep going down the Q&A. I mean, there's like 50 more questions.
We've got a ton of them. All right, let's burn through some of these. One thing to keep in mind is not all students who are blind use Braille or not efficient Braille users, or they don't know Nemeth. This makes it even more difficult for conversion as well for the student. That is absolutely true. Thank you very much for that comment. It is important to take note of the student's skills and the tools available and all that. And that's why we included that early in the slide. It's very important. So what is the cost of Mathpix, Caitlin? I know we talked about that real quick.
Yeah, I can say it again. So the cost of Mathpix, if you want to use it past the 100 uses per month, is $4.99 per month or $49.99 per year. And basically you can use it an unlimited amount.
Perfect. Next question, is there a need to change to linear if the student will access the Word doc on his Braille sense? The answer is no. And in fact, you don't want to change it to linear at all. So like I showed earlier with Mathpix, you just snip the equation, put your cursor in Word and hit Control-V or hit paste, and it does it perfectly. The only time you want to change it to linear is if somebody's going to be using a screen reader, like JAWS, for example, and you want better speech output. That's what the linear is going to be for.
Yes, if you don't change it to linear, it doesn't read it properly.
Yep.
So this is just for screen readers.
For screen readers,
not note takers.
Without a Braille display. So if you're using a Braille display with a screen reader, we're going to recommend that you put that into math type. So snip with Mathpix, paste in a math type, paste the math type equation into the Word document, and then the student will be able to get the proper Braille output. But if it's just speech output and you want it to speak properly, change it to linear. So the question was, can you paste the equation from Mathpix? Can you paste the equation from Mathpix directly into Google Docs document?
So right now, Google Docs doesn't really have any math support. So the only way to use Google Docs with math that's like a tool that's worth using is through the Math Type add-on. So you can go in the Google G Suite app store and you can download the Math Type extension. And what you would do is you would click add-ons and then click the Math Type extension and then edit or insert equation. And from there, you can just paste the MathML text from Snip right into that. And that will create the image that the screen reader will read the alt tag of, right? Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good for not really knowing this space existed a month ago. Not bad.
Knew it existed, but didn't really know anything about the nitty gritty.
All right, up next, this is a comment. It almost seems easier just to Braille the math test and emboss it or ask for the emboss test from CASP, at least for primary grades. I haven't seen the middle school or high school state math tests. I'm also wondering how long each problem will take the teacher to, and it's blank, I'm assuming how long it'll take the teacher
Yeah, I can
to
take
complete.
this question. So the reason, we highly encourage everybody to take the math test, not, what is it called? Like where you actually, your answer to the question either makes your next question more difficult or less difficult.
Adaptive
Because
testing.
if you get, adapted, right? And so, it is kind of a pain to have to emboss every single math question in CAS, but that's the best way that you are going to be able to evaluate where your student is in terms of math. If you get the preset grade level for your student, then if that student is not operating at, like, let's say grade level 3, and then they get the CAS math for grade level 3, then they don't really have a chance to either adapt lower or higher.
Yeah, I think also maybe I'm misreading this a little bit, but it almost sounded like most of the solutions we are recommending here are not solutions we're necessarily recommending for the state testing. This is more for everyday stuff, especially this distance learning. How can we do this digitally, effectively and efficiently? Not so much related specifically to the state testing.
Great. All right, up next, can you use these tools if you're a transcriber who uses a screen reader and a braille display?
I think we answered this question
I think
already.
so too. All right. Make each problem accessible.
Oh, that's the continuation from the.
Yeah. Okay. There was comments in between, so okay. Okay, we're gonna just.
Yeah.
That's fine. We're gonna dismiss that one.
When copying examples, can you copy entire examples at once?
I think Caitlin already covered this earlier, but there could be some potential formatting issues if you're doing a whole bunch at once. So I think we're recommending right now one at a time.
But we are currently working on fixing that.
Yes, but they're way cool, and they're gonna have a solution for you in like a month. So
yeah,
I'm kidding.
We've learned so much. Like in the past week, we're like shifting stuff around. Okay, we got to get this out soon. Like we got to fix all this stuff. So it's great. It's forced us to kind of work harder, and so we'll get it done soon.
Great. So how does Mathpix compare to Equatio? We kind of answered that already. Equatio.
Is the student's refreshable braille display coming out as Nemeth in this way, or more of a correct description?
I think Neil's question, this was back when Thomas was doing a demo of switching it to linear. And that's why he's asking, is it coming out correct, or is it more of a good description? I think we kind of answered that, but
it's more of a good description. So yeah, if the student wants Nemeth Braille output, we're gonna ask that you take your equation, put it into math type. And then also one other thing is that this works if the student has a math type software installed on their computer as well. That was the key to actually making it work well and get actual Nemeth output. Create the document, Microsoft Word with the math type equation, save that document, send it to the student opens it up in Microsoft Word, reads it with JAWS with math type installed on that computer. And that's how you got the Nemeth output. No way to do Nemeth input though.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Stacy asked if the cost of new software with looming educational cuts may pose problems to districts and county offices of education. Yes, we just received an email about this, actually, unfortunately. But I think with a lot of the software companies are allowing for like free versions up until even up to September or October. I would definitely take advantage of that, so you can start using it now so that you can put in a request earlier than later, because we don't want to go into fall and then be like, oh, now I need this, and then it takes a couple months for it to be purchased. At least I know for a lot of schools and districts, and also at CSB, it takes months, some weeks, and sometimes months for things to get approved and for us to actually get the equipment. So again, try to plan ahead, and with everything being free, like try it and see if it works with your student. And if it is something that really does work, then I would highly advocate that for your student. Even put it in their IEP, like, or incorporate it in their goals. And also just want to throw it out there for California TVIs. CSB does have a lending library, and so we have a couple of things like Focus 40s, Braille Note Touches. So if it's something that you want to try, you can send me an email, and I'm going to send you a link for application for lending library. And that's one way we're trying to support TVIs too. We understand that you're not always able to get equipment immediately.
Yeah. If I could do
go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, if I can do a shameless plug for California TVIs, I do sell the products. If you do end up buying one, one of the things we do is we include a whole bunch of free training for you as well. So if you do get one of these products and you're new to it, which we really do try to be of a help there. And we do provide training on these processes as well. So.
Shameless plug back to CSB. We have a lot of curriculum to also support that, but definitely I think having the live support is also very helpful. So
yeah, and by the way, John works for Sterling Adaptives, which is the dealer for HIMS products in Northern California. They're also the dealer for Humanware products and several other brands. So if you're in that area, they're a great company to go for. And
we carry our work with pretty much all the major brands.
Yeah. Eureka, do you have any Polarises in your lending library?
We will.
You will.
The 5 that we just ordered, that purchase is coming through. So once all of our students are taken care of, anything extra can go out for the lending library.
So for all of you that are still with us and you saw how easy math was on the Polaris, call up Eureka and use those 5 that she's going to be getting. All right. Next question. Sorry, Eureka, threw you under the bus. Will this work with Office 365? Our board is all Microsoft. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I have, and that's what works best. Does Mathpix grab graphics? We already discussed that, I believe. All right. Ideally, you should be able to send the Word document directly to the student without having to make it a Braille file. Thank you very much for that comment. And me working for HIMS, I completely agree. Can this process be done without vision? That you can do a lot of it without vision, but some things you will have to have vision for if you're going to be using Mathpix or Equatio.
I would also say, like, if you have some dream way that would be like the best way to do it, let us know, because we're working on, new features all the time, and it would really help us to know like what would be the best for your particular, workflow.
We've got a lot of questions here. Okay, let's go through these fast. We use software to transcribe the Braille in different formats such as BRF for note takers and emboss if needed. This is a lot of unnecessary work. I completely agree. Can you use open source Braille Blaster software? The answer is yes, we can. I'm going to dismiss that one. Okay, that's fine. Does it work with the Braille Note Apex?
I think we already answered that, but yes, but the math capabilities are limited.
BRF. And it has to be a BRF file.
Yeah, BRF file. Is the same with Word 365? Yes. Do students who are taking advantage of college level math use the same processes? No. No. You're going to want to work with, so if you have students that are in college, that student needs to work with the college's accessibility department. So I worked for Disability Access Services for Oregon State University. That's the type of organization that you need to go to in order to get these types of documents translated. And they have their own procedures and processes and tools. It is a very
But a lot of those schools use Mathpix.
A lot of them use Mathpix, yeah. So that's good, but you can't, you got to push for that.
If the person asking was in the accessibility division, that yes, they could potentially use these to
yeah.
create it for students, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you could.
Yes.
And actually what we've shown you here, it would be really good because Braille Blaster's free. You're going to get Mathpix for free. And I know what it's like trying to buy equipment for that type of situation. I've been there and done that. Can you send more than one line of math at a time with Mathpix? The answer is yes, you can. Answer that one. Will this work with the Braille Sense U2 as well? We didn't actually test this with the Braille Sense U2, but I'm going to have to assume.
I think it's going to be about the same as the Apex, right? It does support BRFs, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't think its math capabilities are nearly that of the newer note takers.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different, but yeah, so maybe. I noticed that when the student then solves Thomas's equation on his Polaris and emails it to the math teacher, it does not show up for the teacher unless they download it first and open the doc. You can't just click on the email attachment. So that is a great point. The teacher can see the equation. The only time that you cannot see the equation is when you click on the attachment and it opens up a preview of the file. You actually have to fully open it in Google Docs or fully open it in Microsoft Word. Google Drive in particular, when it's showing a preview of a document, will never show the math equations. But when you're doing a Polaris, you can read the equation in Google Docs and it is editable and everything else like that. So you can open in Google Docs and read the equation. You can open it in Microsoft Word and read the equation. But yeah, just not in the preview. And that's a restriction on Google Drive preview.
Mm-hmm. Angela Bao asked if you can do how you do graphics in Desmos, and there was a couple other questions about tactile graphics, and I think that's not something that we can answer easily or quickly, and would probably require an entire another webinar.
Yeah, and
who's actually up for it, guys?
So I know the people at Desmos really well. I don't think she's on here. Let me check. Nope, she's not on here. But if you guys want a Desmos webinar, we can definitely put that together. And they're definitely willing to hold some webinars with us. So Perky Duck works great with Braille Display and JAWS. Used it in my Braille class.
Yeah, that was one I recommend. Yeah, that's a good free solution as well.
That is awesome.
The only trouble with that one is you're going to be able to do entry in Braille, but it's not going to back translate to print if you had to hand it into a mainstream teacher.
Yep.
That would have the only person who's going to be able to read it is somebody who can read Braille. Another Braille reader.
Can these ideas be used on an iPad with Chrome? Unfortunately not. Can Braille Blaster create Nemeth? The answer is yes.
We already answered that, yeah.
Such a great webinar. Are y'all hosting any other, it says y'all, are y'all hosting any other webinars in the future? The answer is yes, we are hosting future webinars. If you go to hims-inc.com/webinars, that's where you'll find all the HIMS webinars. California School for the Blind has just posted a page with a bunch of resources for both teachers and parents as well, separate pages. And I know Sterling Adaptives is also holding webinars. And
yeah, if anybody's in California, it's probably going to be more for Northern California people. But if you want to email us, we'll put you on our email list. And I try to send out every Monday morning, a list of all the webinars from the manufacturers we represent. So the HIMS webinars, the Humanware webinars, the LBI, the OrCams, the whoever else we represent. And so you get a little email with kind of all the ones for that week. And you can be like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I try to put in information about what it's about too. So we do that if you're in the Northern California area.
But I will say this is the first time this is like a three-way joint.
Yeah.
Four-way joint webinar.
Yeah.
From different companies and organizations.
And it's a good thing we did it this way too, because it took every single one of us plus a handful of others. And actually, I just want to stop and take a minute to thank everybody. I called a ton of teachers. Some of you which are on this webinar right now, thank you very much for your feedback and your expertise. I really, really appreciate it. Without you guys, this couldn't have happened. So thank you. So next, please do more webinars of each segment of this demonstration, more depth and more examples. I think that's a great idea.
So Sterling's going to offer training around anything that involves technology represent. So if anybody wants to do this with a Polaris or with, Braille display or anything, or a Braille note taker, we're happy to provide training on that. Additionally, the video I did for my section for converting files for the Braille Note Touch, we just created a Sterling Adaptives YouTube channel, and I'm trying to put that and other helpful videos up there. So if anybody wants that video for reference, just go to YouTube and search for Sterling Adaptives. We only have like 2 videos up there right now, but we'll be adding more hopefully helpful ones in the future.
Perfect. Does it work with business studies, accountancy, etc.?
If the question is about with Mathpix and reading equations that are related to those disciplines, then yes, we can read equations that are like more like economics and finance and that kind of stuff, if that's what the question is about.
And if it's not what the question is about, I'm not sure how to answer. So just to be honest with you, I don't know. All right, I'd like to know what people are using to create math tactile graphics too. A Braille embosser.
I can handle this one.
Do it, John.
This is my bread and butter. My personal recommendation is a piece of software called Tactile View. Tactile View is one of the most powerful tactile graphics creation tools I've ever seen. It is what I call third party, meaning it's not made by any of the manufacturers of Braille embossers. Because View Plus Braille embossers, they have their own little utility that just works with their stuff. The Enabling has their little Firebird utility that only works with their stuff. This works with basically all of the mainstream embossers out there, and it has some really, really powerful features, like it can auto-generate graphs for you that are already Braille labeled, import pictures and turn them into line drawings. And it can import using Mathtype, and you could use Mathpix to Mathtype and then to Tactile View, like I did for putting it into a Word doc. You can import math equations that way and have them auto come out in Nemeth and auto generate a graph from them. So if you have a Braille embosser, any of the View Plus ones, any of the Index ones that are relatively current, any of the new Romeo and Juliets, all of those have good tactile graphics capabilities and will work together with the software, and it's fairly affordable too. Yeah.
Get a Braille for tactile graphics.
Don't get a Braille for tactile graphics, please.
Please.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't do that. Call me and ask first, please. I'll tell you.
John Ryan from Florida Vision Technology says, thank you. This is a great webinar and explaining how the Polaris and Braille Note Touch Plus work with displaying math problems. Thank you very much. Susan writes, Mathtype plus Math Player plus NVDA will read the Mathtype equation in the Word document. And Susan would know. If there's anybody out there that knows, Susan knows. I could not get it to work because I could not get Math Player to work on my particular computer because, like I said, I'm using a 64-bit version of Microsoft Office, so Math Player would not install and work properly on my computer. So if you have a 32-bit version, everything that I've read says that will work. What is the best thing to do if you're creating a document for both print and Braille readers for the print reader solve on the page? Okay, for the print reader to solve on the page, I see #4 has X:2.
Yeah, this was something that Caitlin and I were working on. And Caitlin, if you wanted to.
Sure. Yeah, so that's kind of just a problem with the math support in Microsoft Word. So probably in that case, you would maybe want, like if you find that some equations that you're using, the Microsoft Word version isn't perfect, then maybe you want to try importing it into Mathtype and instead having it read the alt text or convert that into Braille. I'm not sure for which use case this person was doing.
So if they have both a Braille reader and a print reader, how do you do it for both? Actually, One option that I learned about, but I didn't have time to test, is to actually take the equation, kind of like what we did with the Polaris, snip an equation with Mathpix. You can do paste MathML, and then if you export it to EPUB supports MathML really, really well. And EPUB will give you the benefit of being able to read the equation as math in Braille theoretically. And then for your print readers, EPUB gives you the option to adjust the font sizes and all of that sort of stuff. The user can actually do that. So I think EPUB might be the right answer for you.
I do have something to say to that. So that also depends on, so for your low vision student, if you select it to be professional, it will show up as squared. If you switch it to linear is when it gets the caret too. So if you have two different students, then you could just switch between professional and linear.
Will this work with learning disability software like Kurzweil 3000 or Read and Write Gold?
If they are asking if Kurzweil, using Kurzweil to OCR, Kurzweil will do a fantastic job of OCRing like your text, but not your math. And I'm not as familiar with Write Gold, so, but I'm assuming it's the same situation.
Comment, this is very helpful. Please do more webinars with educators in mind. Loved it. Sounds like this was well received. I hope you guys really liked it. So
yeah, and I just wanted to note, we really did try to take with the educator in mind, you know, like how as teachers can we deliver math given their current situation. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been great. Someone else asked, it would be great to have the PowerPoint. I took a lot of pics of myself and flipped up pages of notes. I have learned a lot. Thank you very much. Yep, the PowerPoint slide will be available. Somebody asked, what about the QBraille? If you're doing math, I recommend that you do a Polaris if you're going to be sticking with the HIMS product. QBraille does actually provide some additional benefits when you're typing math into like Microsoft Word, but you're still not going to be able to do Nemeth input. You just can't do it. Will you have a certificate of attendance for this webinar? I'm pretty good at Photoshop. I don't know how else to answer. Thank you for a very thought-provoking presentation. I look forward to learning more about the products and processes covered. I'm a QTVI working with second-level 12 to 18-year-old students who are blind and vision impaired in a mainstream setting, and math has for many years been particularly problematic. Yes.
Dublin, Ireland. Nice.
Dublin, Ireland.
Cool.
Yeah. We've got people from all over, from Canada, US, Ireland, Korea. All right. Somebody says, great, thank you. Caitlin, could you also demo the table recognition? We already covered that. Do we get the chat as part of the recording?
Well, we're answering all of this live, so basically they do.
Yeah, okay.
Because you're reading all the questions. So.
All right. What if your student has not yet learned to use a Braille display? I have a second grader. You're going to want to focus first on Braille literary skills in general. Second graders for math, I mean, I would say a second grader, you use whatever tools that you have at your disposal because they burn through tech pretty fast with how fast they progress. For really young Braille students, I really don't advise people to spend a whole lot of money on assistive technology because they could use it for 6 months and then their skills exceed that tech. And then you've got an expensive paperweight. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
Eureka, what's your thought? Yeah.
Well, it depends, right? Like, so if your second grader is using a computer with a screen reader, then yes, I do think that having a Braille display is important to expose them to that. And a Braille display's lifetime, like their lifespan is, you know, quite long, 5, 10 plus years. So I think a Braille display would be a good investment if your student is already using a computer. If they're not using anything, then, you know, perhaps a Braille note taker for a second grader would
yeah, I was going to say, I've had good luck with Braille note takers and young students. The touch, for one, I think is pretty simple. And they just added Duxbury's Braille learning tables to the Braille Note Touch as well, which is really cool. So that way you can switch the actual grade of Braille and just include the contractions that they've learned. And so it can not only be a device for them to use, but a device for them to learn a lot of their Braille on too. So, and it can grow with the student.
Naomi, if you want a really super simple device, CSB has a whole bunch of old Apexes that, you know, we can lend you. So just send me an email.
Yeah, that's a great option. Yeah. Get your kids Braille, please. Thank you all so much for doing this. It's awesome. Invested in this and working to support TV ad materials. Thank you very much. Thanks again. Somebody has to go. Probably missed you. A few years now, I'm almost finished Brailing COVID-19 math. It's all fractions and symbols and shapes and angles. Okay. I did sign up for the free Mathpix. I'll try that with some math over the summer. Awesome. One of your CSB students will be getting the Braille Touch when school starts in Fremont again. Thank you very much. So that would free up another Polaris. Perfect. When you scheduled that webinar, can I join it as well? I'm assuming talking about some of the future ones. Yeah,
I think maybe in reference to the tactile graphic webinar or something.
Okay, all right. Comment, yes, Desmos webinar would be greatly appreciated. We will make sure to do that. Thank you, everyone. Please don't forget your Canadian teachers. Please add me to your contact list. We need PD. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Neighbors to the north, gotta love them. Love Tactile View, but if this year still learning it, love it. All right, thank you, stay safe. Perhaps one possible solution for learning disability, put the math content in Microsoft Word, then use Kurzweil 3000 web reader or Read and Gold Snip reading tool. That's a good comment. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for the presentation. How do you access the Mathpix tool? I think we covered that.
Yeah, so if anyone on is still wondering, you can download the app from our website, mathpix.com, and you can get the mobile apps in the iTunes store or the Google Play Store. And so that's how you get the app, and then you can create your account in the app, or you can sign up for an account at accounts.mathpix.com/signup.
Using Mathpix, is formatting required later for longer equations, or does Mathpix take care of that automatically?
What was the first part of that question?
Using Mathpix, is formatting required later for longer equations, or does Mathpix take care of that automatically?
So we take care of the formatting automatically. Basically, however it's formatted in the image is how we're going to format it in the output. But like I was saying before, we're still working out the kinks with compatibility with Microsoft Word. So some things like alignment of many lines of equations might not be perfect, but that's something that we're working on fixing. But if it's just something really long, or I'm not exactly sure what your question is, if you have a specific question, feel free to email me and
I think they're asking if there's any formatting issues with really complicated long equations. I think the answer to that is no. I think the only concern with formatting is a whole bunch or multiple equations lining up with each other or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again so we have our email addresses up there. All right, we've got through all the questions. We still have 51 listeners. If you have any questions, if you have any questions,
for those who stuck around,
if you have questions, go ahead and type them into your Q&A box, or you could go ahead and raise your hand, and we'd love to hear your beautiful voices, your beautiful socially distanced voices. Thank you so much. I'm in New Zealand. It's now 11:10 a.m. Saturday, and I'm expecting my children and grandchildren for lunch. First time in 6 weeks. Congratulations. But this was too valuable to miss. And Diane, I'm going to ask a favor of you. We are going to be doing a advanced math webinar specifically for the Polaris, and I want you to be invited to participate as a panelist.
Thomas, would we be able to get the email addresses of everybody who attended this webinar and then send them the video as well as the PowerPoint, so they don't have to go find it on wherever
Yep.
it's hosted.
Yep. So we will send out an email to everybody that attended or everybody that registered, because I know some people registered but couldn't attend, so that way they could get the recording easier. I had a few people do that specifically. So yeah, we'll send out an email when all of this information is available, and we'll also probably include some cheat sheets, some resources, whatever I could throw together when that becomes available.
There's a comment from Adrian and Mandy. John and Thomas, when are you submitting your applications to the Tech Lab at the California School for the Blind?
Oof, that's a good one.
Man, I'm just right up the street too.
Yeah, me too. Pretty short commute.
Sterling takes really good care of me right now, Adrian, so you might have to wait.
All right, let's see. Do we have any other questions typed in? Nope. So let's go ahead and Diane. Diane, go ahead and unmute yourself. Alt-A if you are on a computer. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say thanks personally. It's been a great webinar, even though it's eaten into my Saturday morning and I really do have to go. But I will definitely be in touch. I want to have a real play with some of these tools. And as I see it, the big issue is going to be, can the note takers handle the back translations and the forward translations? BRF file is great because they can read that, but it's if you haven't got time to do that, you can just send them straight as a Word document or an email. Will be brilliant.
Yeah, on the touch you can't. On the Polaris you can. Yeah, on the touch you're going to have to get your math via a BRF, and then once you've done that, you could edit the BRF if you wanted to. Alternatively, what I recommend for most people is go over to Keyword, write your literary things. If you're familiar with the touch, you press backspace M, that jumps you into key math. You write your math in there and you export it and put it into the Word doc. That you can actually generate a visual preview, which does show the print math correctly, and that could be turned into a sighted teacher. So really on the
brilliant thing about that machine, because all of the Braille students that we have are fully mainstream, so we're trying to meet their needs as itinerant teachers, and that can get really tricky.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
And
thank you very much. I really must go now.
Well, thank you for joining.
We're out
Thank you, Diane.
so, okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And for those of you that don't know Diane, she has been working with Braille Math. She knows UEB and Nemeth both very well. She's very well versed in Braille Math. Somebody writes, I just hope we'll be able to get into our offices long enough to download our new software and start using them. Thank you, Eureka, Thomas, Caitlin, and John. Very helpful and informative. Thank you very much. And the tools, Mathpix is free. Braille Blaster is free. So those are free things that you can download on your home computers if you choose to. You're not going to have to pay a dime for it. So
yeah, maybe it would be worthwhile mentioning too that during the COVID period, I think JAWS is Vizbureau, whatever it is now, they are offering JAWS, I think, for free at this time, and Zoom Text are free at this time. For California folks, Supernova is a fantastic magnifier and screen reader as well. That we have, if you email me, I can give you a 3-month free license for teachers or for students. Those, although aren't probably free in the long run, those are some free solutions for now if your student doesn't have a screen reader or doesn't have screen magnification for your computer.
Yeah, we do have a hand raised. Maria, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk, and you might have to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. There you go.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you. This is very helpful. And yes, I would really like to have that webinar on creating tactile graphics. So
I'll look into doing one of those. Yeah, I've done lots of those. Yeah.
Okay, that would be very much welcome, because that's the one that takes a long time to do too, like the math tactile graphics. So thank you in advance.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Maria.
Okay,
All
I
right.
think we can just wrap it up. We're like 2 hours and 20 minutes in, so we could probably, and we still have 43 people, but we can probably go on forever.
Good.
But it's Friday, and I'm about to start my weekend.
Thank you all so
Perfect.
much for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll make you all available, or let you all know when this becomes available. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.